2006 was a special summer for me. It was my one and only time where I had the great joy of visiting the Holy Land. And as people of faith, it's my prayer for all of us that before our days are done on this earth, that each of us would have an opportunity to walk on the soil that Jesus walked, to visit the sea where Jesus fished and swam, to be a part of the places that Jesus was a part of in his earthly pilgrimage. One of those places that was particularly powerful for me is the site of today's gospel reading from John, Bethany. Bethany is located about 1.5 miles east of Jerusalem, but it's located sort of in a valley, and it's behind the great Mount of Olives. So from Bethany, you don't have a view of the temple. And maybe equally important for the people at that time, from the temple, you don't have to see Bethany. I remember driving into Bethany, and it's a typical part of pilgrimages to the Holy Land because it's an opportunity to visit the tomb of Lazarus, this place where Jesus resurrected his friend. And Bethany in 2005, 2006, 2007, to this day, is a ghetto. It's in Palestinian territory. It's on what is called the West Bank. And I remember asking our tour guide, and he informed us that Bethany hasn't changed in millennia. Bethany in the day of Jesus was a ghetto. It was the place where the poor and the sick called home. It was the final way station and rest stop for those like Jesus who would be traveling from afar, from places like Galilee, to come and observe the high holy days in Jerusalem. And so yearly, sometimes a few times a year, Jesus and his companions would make the long journey from Galilee to Jerusalem. And a place of rest for Jesus and his companions. A place where his family of choice, his friends, live, was Bethany. When we say our God is a friend to the poor, it's quite literal in the case of Jesus and those who called Bethany home. Among them, Martha and Lazarus and their sister Mary. We'll hear next Sunday, Passion Sunday, about another resident of Bethany, Simon the leper. Bethany was the home to leper colonies. It was the home to hospitals and care stations for the sick and the weary. And it was home to the poor, like Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. And it's in this setting, and it's important to realize that it's in this setting that we hear John proclaim those words from the mouth of Jesus. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. On the face of it, it seems rather callous, or perhaps at best, that Jesus seems to be indifferent to the plight of the poor, that Jesus has resigned himself to institutional poverty, that their lot in life is simply to suffer in poverty. But that would be a misreading of the Gospel of John. It's more likely just very practical, that Jesus is recognizing that he's in a place that is the way station of the poor. And if we were to focus simply on those final words of Jesus, we miss two incredibly important figures in the gospel story today. Two figures that in many ways can represent our own journey. On the one hand, there is Judas Iscariot, who with his superficiality, who with his deceiving heart, claims on the surface, what a great waste Mary is making of this perfumed nard to anoint and bless Jesus. On the other hand, we have Mary of Bethany, this woman of pure heart, this wise woman who realized that Jesus was her Lord, who realized that day at table in Bethany, in her humble abode, she was in the presence of the living God. And she gave God her best. This beautiful passage from the 12th chapter of John invites us to consider these two figures. Judas Iscariot. Oh, he walked with Jesus. He talked with Jesus. He dined daily with Jesus. He likely heard all of the Lord's sermons. He witnessed most, if not all, of his miraculous signs. And yet still, his heart remained hard. He remained fixed on his own agenda. And to the extent that Jesus could help his own agenda and his vision of what God's kingdom was supposed to be, Jesus was a convenient friend and master. On the other hand, we have Mary, materially poor, but spiritually rich, spiritually blessed in her wisdom, recognizing and believing in the power of God made manifest in Jesus there with her. And she offered to God her very best. She offered to God her very heart. Today, Jesus dines with you and Jesus dines with me. Like Paul, as he so beautifully expressed in the letter to the Philippians, like Mary of Bethany, will we find in Jesus the pearl of great price? Will we find the one to whom all our honor, all our praise is to be given? Or will we, like Judas Iscariot, keep our hearts closed, remain firm and fixed in our own agenda, in our own perspective of my way or the highway, and overlook the pearl of great price? Jesus comes to us. He knocks on the door of our hearts. He longs to dine with us. He longs to transform us. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. Jesus passes this way. Will we open our hearts? Will we open our lives? Will we trust, as Paul, as Mary of Bethany, of the faithful through the ages have trusted? Or will we dig in our heels? Will we close our hearts? Will we take the path of Judas Iscariot. Pray God today we offer Christ our best, for the one who comes to dine with us is himself our bread of life.